recording. All right, let's start. Let's get started, guys. I think we've given everybody enough time. All right, let's get started, guys. All right, let me start my screen. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join the Skillweed Mentorship Leadership Academy that we mentor and train our folks in different areas. This is a free session. We typically do it as part of our Give Back program within our community. Today's topic is going to cover what we call GDPR. A lot of us must have seen this at some point in our careers or online. It's called General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. By the end of this program tonight, the next few minutes, you're going to learn a lot of good stuff around GDPR so that in the future, if you find yourself in any position, you can easily speak intelligent to it. All right. The cool thing is that I've given you the presentation. You have access to this presentation. You can look at it at any point. Feel free to use it at any point as a reference guide. But we're going to leave this class tonight with solid knowledge base to give you level around what exactly is GDPR. Okay, let's get started, guys. So what is GDPR? GDPR is a privacy and security law governing organization worldwide that deals with people's data. This is specifically to the European Union member state. I'll give you some life stories today, some war stories on a personal level on how it applies to real life situation. Let me give you an example. In the past, one of my clients was, it's a huge company in the United States, and they have operation in Europe, Germany to be specific in this case. Because of the fact that they maintain data in Germany, my team and I, we needed to pull certain information, but because of the GDPR regulation, we could not just directly pull this data from the US, really. We had to physically go to the German location to actually pull the data there so that we are in compliance with the GDPR law. So it's European focused law. All right, you might ask me, how does it apply to your day-to-day? If your organization is a company that has subsidiaries or access outside of the United States in the European Union, GDPR automatically kicks in. How does that apply to you? It means if you are in a company today, one of your questions would be, hey guys, do you have any operation in European Union? If the answer is yes, do you keep any data within the EU space? If the answer is yes, then you know that naturally GDPR becomes applicable to those environments. Now let's talk about the consequences. Violation of GDPR is extremely, it has very, very significant ramification. The penalties are very harsh. They could go into $1 million in some cases. So because of that, it's very, very vital and important to make sure that our organizations is not in violation of these GDPR laws. Very soon we'll get into the details of what those laws really mean. So why is it important? It would cost you a lot of money. And we're talking of, in some cases, if you're a multinational, millions of dollars in fine. So they are not joking. This is not a joke. Let me put some historic context into this. In Europe, in World War II, one of the big crises we had was we had 6 million Jews that were in encampment, and they were killed as a result of World War II. Now, looking back as historic context, one of the reasons was because they had database of this European, of these Jewish, European Jews that were used to figure out who was a Jew. And as a result of that, millions of Jews died during the World War II, right? So it means in Europe, unlike in other part of the world, they take privacy as a big deal. It's a bigger deal, really. It's a very significant deal. So people take it very serious. This is not a joke. The fines will be harsh. You would lose a lot of money. In some cases, you would get people fired for those laws as needed. So it's a very, very big deal. This is not a joke, guys. So people take it very serious. Why GDPR? very important also. This helps us to focus on curbing cybercrime and create confidence with organization. If my organization is in compliance with GDPR, it gives me some reasonable confidence and assurance to say, well, at least our data is well protected and used appropriately. So that's very significant, guys. The history of GDPR, let's talk a little bit of historic context into it. You know, the European Convention on Human Rights was held in 1950. They had some privacy law passed in 1955. Then they went further. Nothing was passed for so many years. Then in 2018, GDPR was actually passed at that point in time. So this is very significant. At this point in time, GDPR was really, really significant because organization realized, we're not going to let people just violate our European Union partners or member states. There will be consequences for data breaches. A lot of us in the US, you will notice there are a lot of data breaches here and there. Some of them require disclosure, whereby they have to disclose. Some of them would actually hide and not disclose it. So regulations are very good because it helps people to do the right things. I'm not saying you're not going to do the right thing, but we trust you, but we also verify. That's the whole model we use here. Okay. So this law was passed in May 25, 2018. What are the key requirements for application of GDPR in organizations outside of the US? So first thing is that the organization must be offering goods and services to people in the European Union. So it means you must be part of the member states in the EU community for you to have GDPR applicable to your organization. That means if you work for a company in the US or Canada or Australia, anywhere in the world, your first question is, all right, guys, do you have a location or presence in Europe, in the EU member states? If the answer is yes, it means you have to ask them specifically, do you process data? If the answer is yes, then naturally GDPR will probably be applicable to the organization. The other thing is that we need to understand the organization monitors the online behavior of the citizens and residents of the European Union. That's a very significant thing also. We want to make sure that they process information about residents and members of the European Union. So what's the whole scope of GDPR? It protects the data of EU citizens and residents. It applies to organizations that handle such data, whether inside of the US or EU or outside of the EU. So if you process European Union member data, you need to ensure GDPR is applicable. So some of you on this call, you are probably auditors, cybersecurity folks, or you're trying to get into that field. Speak smart going forward. One of the things you start doing is you ask this question: is your organization within the EU location? If they tell you yes, smile and say, is GDPR applicable to them? You're going to sound so intelligent, guys. My goal is incremental phases, small, little by little. I make my guys, my people, our community, we get more intelligent on topics, on relevant areas. I focus on building operation technology around different assessments, GRC mostly. My goal is to empower as many of us Africans into the field of cybersecurity and GRC as much as possible. So as part of our Give Back community, today we decided to talk about GDPR, which is a privacy law applicable to people that has organization or subsidiaries in the European Union. Very, very big deal. So I want us to make sure we are very cognizant of the fact that if an organization has a presence in EU, GDPR kicks in. Very important, guys. This alone can make your organization find multi-millions of dollars. So it's very, very significant. All right, what are the territorial part of GDPR? We talked about it already. It's focused on European Union. And what does it entail? If you are processing data within the European Union, then it's applicable to those organizations immediately. It doesn't matter. So if you are Walmart, Target, whatever your operation is in the US, for example, my first question is I'm going to ask: do you have a subsidiary or a parent company or whatever it is outside of the US in the European Union space? If your answer is yes, immediately in your mind, everybody just say, have you consider GDPR. Can we type it together? This is going to be very interactive, guys. That's what we do here. I want to make my guys elevate you, more intelligent. Can we type it in the chat group real quick? Type if somebody, your first question is, do you have any presence or operation in the EU? If the answer is yes, always ask them, do you follow GDPR? Or, so can we type it together? Can we type, is GDPR applicable to you? Can we type it real quick, everybody? Let's do it real quick. Let's do it. Let's go. Go, guys. Just type, is GDPR applicable? Can we type it in the group real quick, in the chat? Very important, guys. Yep, is GDPR applicable? The goal for us, guys, and we need to talk about this together, the more you type it, the mental state. I want to make sure you can say the language in case somebody asks you, oh, we have a presence in EU. Just ask them that and say, hey, does GDPR apply to you? If you say that, guys, ladies, it automatically gives you validation. It makes people think, wow, okay, this person, we want them, we like them, because they're thinking from a perspective of making sure we are in compliance, we are not in violation. We're talking of millions of dollars of fine, guys, so it's a big deal. So always type it and say, is GDPR applicable? Thank you. Keep typing it, because that's the lingo I want you to get used to, get familiar with. Get out of this program tonight, check any organization, they have an EU presence. Your mindset is simple. Does GDPR is applicable to you guys? Do you process customer data or record in the European Union? If the answer is yes, and again, you know in your heart it's probably yes, but you're validating. When you say that in any organization, any environment, they take you serious, it validates you. It doesn't matter even if it's whatever your role is. You might be an analyst, a technical architect, whatever it is, whatever, it doesn't matter really. Cybersecurity professional, or even a regular financial analyst, whatever your role is. If you say that in any conversation, people see you as, oh, he or she is strategic, they are knowledgeable, they understand how everything ties together. So it's pretty cool. And our goal is to make our guys cool, more knowledgeable, more advanced, and stand tall with your peers. All right, let's move on. All right. Scope of GDPR. Remember again, I said, as long as you are processing people's personal data, that's the key, guys. If you process our personal data, then that's a big deal. So let's talk about the personal data we're talking about. There are some personas or some key players I would like to talk about. What is personal data? This is information that can identify individual directly or indirectly. You and I would agree some of those are obvious. For example, if you're in the US or in Canada, we have a social security numbers, right? Or TIN number, whatever the number is to identify us. So it means those are very confidential information. Your name, your address, your bank details, whatever information it is, those are very personal information. We want to make sure that they are not compromised at any point in time. So very, very big deal, guys. Personal data, very, very important, very significant at any point in time. The other thing is what we call data subject. Data subject. We've talked about personal data, data subject. These are the people whose data are being processed. That's you and I. So if you are present in United Kingdom, Ireland, Scotland, any of this location in the EU, Spain, Italy, Germany, then it means you are a subject. If your data is processed at any point in time, you are a subject. What are you again? Can we type it together? If my data is processed in the European Union, I am a subject. Can we type it together? Data subject. Can we do that real quick? Some fun exercise. Can we type it real quick? Data subject. I am a data subject. So let's say my information is within the EU location, then I'm a subject. I'm a data subject. That is data subject. Let's type it real quick, everybody. Again, it's a short class, but guys, let's make it very impactful as much as possible. Type data subject. Thank you, everybody. Awesome, awesome. You guys are super awesome. All right, let's move to the next one. We've talked about data subject, which is us, right? Let's talk about data processing. Let's talk about that briefly. Data processing. Like the name implies, these are the actions performed on our data. Don't forget again, let's use Facebook, for example. If Facebook used to have data center in Ireland, for example, which is European Union. So if Ireland location is storing our data, organizing it, structuring it, recording it, all of those collection is data processing. It means data is being processed at any point in Ireland. The process of those actions performed on our data is what we call data processing, okay? So actions performed on our data is what we call what? Data processing. Let's go to the next one. So again, we've talked about data subject, which is the actual, we as subjects, as the people that their data is being processed. And we have the data processing, which is the process of actually going through those data itself and storing it. Then we go to the next one, which is what we call data processor. Let's talk about this real quick. I want us to type it together. The processor is that person or entity that does the processing on behalf of the data controller. Let's talk about who the data controller is. We'll talk about that shortly. The controller is a person. Let's take a good example. If I am Walmart, right, and I'm storing customers' information, I'm the controller. I'm controlling the data. However, Walmart hired, let's say, Accenture, and Accenture is the one processing all the data. Accenture is a third party to Walmart. Even though Walmart is the one liable, then at that point in time, we would have the controller and the data processor. In this case, because a third party is processing our information, we will call them the data processor. Can we type it together? The person processing the information. Let's just type data processor. Thank you, guys. You all are awesome. Data processor. I want to ask you to type. Would appreciate if you guys keep typing. This is just fun. Good knowledge, guys, because think about it. You might ask me, how does it apply to you? If you're in cybersecurity space, if you're in compliance space, audit space, it's important because when you're in a meeting and you're doing, let's say, solution architecture, or you're doing data architecture, whatever it is, in cyber or whatever space you are in, if you ask those questions, honestly, it gives you credibility immediately because it shows that you're not just thinking of your technical knowledge, you're thinking of the overall process around what you're doing. And that gives you immediate credibility right there. So the goal is we're here to make every one of our team a little bit smarter, incremental knowledge. The more we know, the more you can leverage and the better for us all. Okay, excellent. Data processor. Let's go to the big daddy, data controller. The data controller decides how and why personal data will be processed. Let me give you a good example. For example, all of us on this call probably has a WhatsApp account, or we have a Facebook account. Guess what? We just create our ID, we're having fun with Facebook, connecting with friends and family, doing our normal stuff. But guess what? There are some fine prints on those platforms that they will sometimes share our data without information. Sometimes we get to find out about what they're doing in Congress when they bring them to, Capitol Hill and they're talking to them and they find out, oh, wait a minute, guys, these guys have been processing our data illegally, so to speak, at times, right? So that's a different story. But the bottom line is that even though they're the ones that we entrusted with our data and they outsource it to a third party, the data processor, guess who is still liable? They are liable. They are the data controller. They're the ones liable. They're the one we are going to sue if there's a class action suit. So they are still liable. It does not take them away from liability. So that's a big deal. Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. The key regulatory points of GDPR. Let's talk about it. Now we're getting into the specific of what are the key things in terms of the regulatory piece of GDPR at the end of the day. Number one, we have to understand the purpose limitation. Number two, lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Number three, data minimization. Then there's accuracy, there's accountability, there's the storage limitation, and integrity and confidentiality. Let's take the first one. Purpose limitation. That means that the data processing, what are the terms defined on how our data will be processed? Very important. That must be defined up front, right? And that's one of the fine prints we always, hold companies like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, that you guys did not declare how you will use our data. We only found out later how the data is being used. The other thing is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Are we sure the data processing is within confine of the laws? They have to be fair, right? Data minimization. The collection and processing should always be necessary for intended purposes, meaning if you take my data for the purpose of creating a user ID for me in Facebook, I don't want to find out later that you're using my data to also market to a third party to sell me product without my consent, right? Those are big deals. In the EU, those are much more bigger deals. There's a lot of class action suits. People keep getting money free because they sue all these big companies and they win most of the time, because if you violate those agreements, you are going to pay for it. The other thing is accuracy. What does that mean? Are we sure the data that you have collected from me is accurate? What is the storage limitation for all our personal data that is being stored? Is it stored as long as possible? Is it properly archived? Some people have an archive strategy of maybe every 5 years, they can delete all your data if you don't use it. They would have to define what that is. Integrity and confidentiality means we want to make sure our data is not changed in the course of using it. Is it confidential? Are we sure nobody is looking at our data that does not have a business looking at it? So if I put my information on Facebook and suddenly I'm finding out it's being used on to market products to me, that is a violation of my confidentiality. That's a big deal. I can sue you for that. In the European Union, they don't play games. People would get into big trouble, and there are so many fines out there. It's crazy, really. Sometimes people are afraid to do business in the European Union because of that. GDPR is, they don't joke, man. It's a big, big deal. The other thing is accountability. What does that mean? It means every one of our folks that are GDPR controllers, they need to make sure there is appropriate compliance and control in place. That means they should have a process in place to ensure and measure compliance within their organization. All right, so some key points around GDPR. Data security, like we said, we want to make sure the data is secured. Most of us understand two-factor authentication now. It's simple. Sometimes it will send you a text to your email, to your phone, or send an email to you, or sometimes it will need a Google authenticator to make sure that you have the right access to the system you're requesting access for. The other thing is staff training. We want to make sure that our staff are appropriately trained in cybersecurity and in the risk applicable to those areas of concern. The other thing is we want to make sure that we limit access to personal data. People that are supposed to have access to the personal data are the only ones that should have access to those personal data. So those are huge, huge factor also. So some things organizations should justify before processing your data. It has to be number one. That's why before you sign up for any account, they will ask for you and I's consent. That's a big deal. The other thing is that, we want to understand what the contract is for the service provider. We want to understand that they are following the legal obligation that is required. We want to understand the data processing itself. It's pretty clear for the organization. We want to make sure that the processing is protecting public interest. Now, you and I would agree, sometimes our social media platforms have not acted in good faith. They market our data for marketing purposes, which is a big deal. But many of them did not get away with it because there's been a lot of litigations, lawsuits to recover damages because of that. Then the other thing is to make sure that the organization itself has a legitimate reason for processing your data in the first place. So that's also very significant. Consent, like we said, of course, we want to make sure that the person or the kid or they are age appropriate to consent, right? It has to be specific, it has to be unambiguous and straight to the point. Very important. All right, let me pause. Any question? That's the quick high-level summary of what GDPR is all about. And I'll give you guys a quick overview quiz. Let's see, and it's okay if you, what I'm gonna do, we normally have like a quick breakout session. Don't leave the group yet, guys, everybody. The breakout session is just, I want you all to discuss what are the potential risks for anyone that has a subsidiary in an European Union member states. Tell me what are the potential risks that could occur. Let's work as a group, just discuss potential risk of any subsidiary, any company that has a subsidiary in the European Union. Let me type it to the group. Let's quickly type it. Somebody said, I like that. Some people are giving me some good ideas. So the question is, what are the risks for any organization that has a subsidiary in the Europe? All right, that's the question. I want you guys to tell me three potential risks, 3 risks you can think about. So I'm going to put it in the breakout section so for us to just brainstorm, think through it together, and have fun doing it, guys. Give me 1 second. Let me. Very important. Make it fun. Don't overthink it. Now you might be asking me why I'm making us think through this. The reason is simple. We need to be able to tie it together and put it in a scenario format. Think of the potential risk of an organization having a subsidiary in the European Union, and what are the potential risks? Just think. I want to force you to think and say, hey, I can tell you some. There could be a risk of compromise of our data. There could be a risk of fine. So I want you guys to just brainstorm together and think of what are some risks. So I'm going to do we just do for like 10 minutes, then I'll wrap up, okay? Again, our classes, we just try to make it as much fun as possible. So I want to make us just think, come up with 3 risks, and you guys present it. Come up with 3 risks, and we present it. Let's go. I'm going to create a group real quick, and let's have fun. We'll do it for 15 minutes. And I've made you guys, we can all share and just have fun doing it, okay?
Which is using the information for attacks. Another one I can think of the point of my head is using the information for business purposes. Imagine a pharmaceutical company wants to release a product. They can easily go to Facebook and just get the information from them, and then they know the demographics of people that they can target using Facebook as a platform. So maybe somebody else has another
Does it mean, is it referring to
Is anyone sharing this group? Just talk about 3 risks you can face within with GDPR. I gave you 2 examples, so feel free, guys. Anyone can lead and just talk about it. Have fun doing it. I want to stimulate your thinking. That's all. So go ahead, guys, and do your thing. Thank you.
Suggestion. Mr. Femi, I think we're a little bit confused about your question today. Or I'm a little bit confused. Mr. Femi?
Okay, I'm not gonna say I heard, but if I can tell my opinion, I think he said.
Yes, that's where I was going. Yeah, that's a big
very
one.
good. Financial risk is another.
Yeah.
Then another one we can talk about. How about reputation?
Yeah, reputation risk as well.
I think that's about it.
Well, we did great.
All right, guys. Are you guys already working on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Excellent. All right. Let me get out of your business. Awesome job. Thank you.
So who's going to present?
So choose who's going to present in the next few minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Is that you cannot transfer EU data out of the European Union.
Yes.
So, are you segmenting the data? How are you processing that data? What plans are you putting into place? If now, you are bound by the GDPR laws. So that's one of the risk factors.
So what are you going to call that risk? These are the factors.
Processing of the data. How is the data going to be segmented? That's a risk.
Okay, so who's going to present for us, please?
But
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join again. So if you're presenting for your group, do me a favor, can you raise up your hands and I would call you to present. Also, please, if you're on this call, we have a YouTube channel I posted. Please, can you kindly just all go in there, like, subscribe, so that we can build a station for our team. So let's start with Fikayo. Go ahead, Fikayo, and go ahead and present and tell us what your top 3 findings are. Over to you, Fikayo. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'm presenting for group 4. We talked about legal risk, and what that ties back to is how to ensure that the organization have the permission to use the European data, like you for the European subject. So if we have a subsidiary, do we have processes, that have been put in place to meet the requirements of GDPR for that part of the organization within the European Union? So that's the legal risk. And then we have financial risk, which will be tied to, which I'm also going to tie it to like reputational. So if we don't put all this other, all these other processes in place to meet EU requirements, then we're at risk for the financial loss of up to 4% of our annual revenue. So those are like the factors. Is it worth it then to continue to do this type of business, knowing the financial burdens that comes with not complying with GDPR? And then sorry, there's one.
Right.
And then for the EU data that we're processing, are we transferring into the United States or outside of the European Union? Because that's a risk that needs to be also addressed. So if we're processing within the EU, then we should be fine. For transferring outside of the European Union for processing, then that's a risk that needs to be addressed and mitigated.
Excellent job. Excellent job. Thank you, Fikayo. Siwad Lade, please, can you go ahead and present? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akin. Let me share my screen. I think we wrote it down. So we came up with some few items. I'll just read them out. So we came up with the risk of incurring harsh fines, which could be as much as 4% of the global revenue or 20 million euro, whichever one is higher. We also came up with risk of data breach. Data in transit could be breached if proper security measures are not put in place, like physical, technical, and administrative security controls. If they are not in place, we can be exposed to breach of data. We also have the risk of breach of data integrity, which we kind of see differently from data breach in terms of where data is vitiated and data is no longer accurate. Talking about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data right there. We also talked about the risk of legal and reputational risk when there are breach incidences. It could be followed up with litigation and all that. So we talked about legal and reputational risk. That's all we had.
Excellent job, Mr. Tiwa. Thank you so much. Evelyn, please go ahead and present also real quick.
Yeah, I'm presenting for group 3. I'm in room 3. So we talked about the risk of higher financial ramifications for operating in the EU, whether it is storing the data there at a data center that is in the EU or actually operating the business there. It will come with a lot of financial loss if the data is breached. And we also discussed higher insurance premiums if the company is operating in the EU, whether they are processing the data there or storing the data there. And then we also talked about the risk of employees not being properly trained, and so that leading to breach of data that could also cause high fines. And so if to avoid all of that, it will cost organizations a lot to train their employees to be aware of all the regulations in the EU so that everybody can be compliant with the GDPR. Yeah, that is what we talked about in group 3.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. Very well done. So let's take Smart Chapel. Sorry, that's what you have on your name. Go ahead, please, and present.
So it's Shumi. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Shumi. Thank you.
So I'm representing from room 5, and we spoke about data breach and integrity or accreditation of the organization due to the multiple lawsuits that we'll get from operating there if things don't work out, and can lead to loss of operating licenses, and also loss of data in the process of harmonization of the company. Yeah, that's what we spoke about.
Excellent job. Excellent job. Group, collectively, can we just use the icon to give a round of applause to Tiwa, Sikayo, Evelyn, and Shumi? I will mute everybody. Let's just give them a round of applause and appreciate them. That was really well done, guys. That was. Let me see if I can. 1 second. I'm trying to see if I can unmute us to give them a round of applause. For those of us that don't know, at Skillweed, we do cybersecurity training. This compliance piece of it is part of our GRC flagship program. But weekly, we still give back to the community in different knowledge and skill sets. But if you want to get deeper knowledge, reach out to us on the GRC side. There's so much to go. We have NIST framework, ISO, third-party risk management, policy and procedure development, next SIP, so many things we can always add into the mix. But you guys are awesome. You did a great job presenting. Let me try and unmute everybody and just acknowledge you guys and give them a round of applause. All our presenters today. All right, I think we can all unmute. Let's unmute and just give them, appreciate them. Thank you so much.
Hey, hooray.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Guys,
guys.
good job.
Thank you
Good
very
job.
much.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank
Good
you.
job, guys. Good job.
Good job, guys.
Good job.
Thank you.
I love it. You guys are spreading so much love. Thank you, everybody. And typically we stick to time, and that's all we have for tonight. At the minimum, remember, guys, no GDPR. It's European focused. It ensures data is protected for the European Union organizations. And Godspeed, guys. Best week ever. Keep shining. If you have questions, ping us and have fun. Thank you. Talk soon. Everybody.